Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
What do you dream about? I'm not talking what do you daydream about. Daydreams, I want to call them fantasies, but as we're driving in our car, we're kind of projecting perhaps where we want the day to go. They're sort of conscious decisions or conscious playing out scenarios, projecting, vision casting, if you will. But what do you dream about when you're asleep, when you have those moments where rapid eye movement, not half asleep, but asleep at night? And not everybody remembers their dreams. I'm not really great at remembering my dreams. My wife is. She'll share with me dreams. A lot of people remember their dreams and can kind of share about those dreams. But when I talk to people about their dreams, what I generally hear is they dream about interacting with other people. You don't dream about knitting a sweater. You don't dream about maybe driving a new car. You dream about driving a new car with somebody or interacting with somebody, having to do with knitting perhaps. But you're not dreaming about things per se. You're dreaming about interactions with other people. And I've never really thought about that, but and now that I think about the dreams that I do remember and the stories that my wife tells me about her dreams and the stories that other people tell me about their dreams, it tends to make sense. I ran into another article out of SciBlog, and the title of the article is What Your Brain is Doing When You Think It's Doing Nothing. And this is part of their premium package, but they're trying to solve this long-standing mystery about what the brain is doing when it's doing nothing. Perhaps you're out on a walk. Perhaps you're sitting, not driving in a car, but you're driving with somebody and looking out the window, and you're kind of in that state of you're really doing nothing. Maybe it's meditation. What they find is that when your brain feels like it's resting, when you feel like it's resting, it's actually preparing to be social. And this is what they have found is they've long known that there are certain parts of the brain that are active when we're social. There are certain parts of the brain that are active when we're social, and that part of the brain is referred to as the dorsomedial prefrontal cortex. That's 3 words: dorsomedial prefrontal cortex. I'll get that in the show notes. And I did a little bit of research on that particular part of the brain, and what I found is exactly what I'm sharing with you, is that that part of the brain is responsible for decision making and social behavior. And it's located in the middle and top of the prefrontal cortex. It's essentially above the eyes and behind the forehead, if you will. Hit yourself in the forehead, you're hitting yourself in the dorsomedial prefrontal cortex. And it's involved in a variety of cognitive and social functions, including emotional regulation, social cognition, and decision making. And it plays an important role in integrating information from different sources, such as our internal thoughts, external cues, and social interactions. And they know this. They know this. It's also involved in various mental health disorders, such as depression, anxiety, and schizophrenia. They study the brain. They hook people up. They have them, what are they doing when they're talking? What are they doing when they're on social media? What part of the brain is lighting up? And it's this dorsal medial prefrontal cortex that is lighting up. So what they have done is they have actually sat people down and hooked them up and looked at their brains when they're doing nothing, just sitting there. And what's fired up? It's the dorsal media prefrontal cortex. And this is research out of UCLA. This is not just some random somebody. Professor is Matthew Lieberman. Um, and what he basically says, and I'll quote him: the brain has a major system that seems predisposed to get us ready to be social in our spare moments. So when our brain is doing nothing, it's actually getting us ready to be social. And that's part of what our dreams are. And I'm not a brain scientist, I'm not a neurosurgeon or anything like that. But I'm just kind of piecing thoughts together, logic together, that the reason we're dreaming about people and not knitting a sweater or doing woodworking is interacting with other people is really important. It's always been really important. The biggest risk we've ever had, is whether we can trust somebody or not. Now I know there are other risks out there that really involve fight or flight, that saber-tooth tiger, or the burning building or whatever, where you have to make a snap decision, and that's a different portion of the brain. It's very primitive. It's fight or flight, but from a modern world, from a human perspective, one of the most important decisions we have to make in a safe place is whether we can trust somebody or not. Can I trust this person I'm going on a hunt with to have my back? Can I trust them to be reliable? Because if they're not reliable, I am going to be in trouble. And you're not necessarily going through that consciously, but kind of going through it subconsciously. But that's a huge question mark. Hey, I've met somebody, I like this person. Can I trust this person? And that's really, in my mind, part of the courting process. Is this somebody that long term I can hang with? Somebody that I can build a life around? Somebody that if we have kids, they're not just going to walk off, or they're going to kind of share their load around the house, because having kids is a lot of work. Or just even in relationships where kids aren't involved. Is this somebody where we can trust each other? We have shared values. I heard a definition of love is giving someone basically the tools to destroy you and trusting that they won't. But that's again, that's not a fight or flight situation, but we have to determine whether to trust somebody. And so this social interaction and making these decisions, being social, is really important. And so what they have found is that the social nature of our brains is also biological. And these things are tied together, and we kind of think that they're separate, and they're really not. And when our brains are doing nothing, they're really prepared to have these interactions. I don't know for a fact, but to me it seems like it's going through these iterations. I've got this encounter with this person, or I'm going to a networking event. I'm going to a networking event. Who are the 16 different types of people I might encounter at the networking event? I might run into this person. We've had bad interactions in the past. How am I going to handle that? How am I going to conduct myself? And these are not really conscious decisions. These are conscious thoughts. These are just things your brain's kind of working through all sorts of things. What do I do when I run into that stranger? What do I do when I run into that person I really like? And it's kind of going through, and it's preparing your mind for game time, actual interaction, when you actually show up at the event. And that's what's happening in the dorsal medial prefrontal cortex. Your brain is getting you ready to be successful. Now, obviously, life throws curves at us, things we're not ready for, and that's the nature of surprise. But much of what we encounter in the world, we're really ready to encounter. And so, essentially, what this research says is that we're always getting ready. We're either having relationships or getting ready to have relationships, is what it really boils down to. Because relationships and social interaction is really important to our success and ultimate survival. And so the brain is always kind of on go time with respect to, what's happening in your world and what's going to be happening in your world. And so even when you're doing nothing, sitting and meditating, perhaps gardening, you're just letting your brain go. Your brain is focused on that next encounter, and you might know who those next encounters are. I wonder if I always look at my calendar the day before and kind of get a sense is, okay, where are the opportunities? Where are the threats? I'll map it out at the beginning of the week, and then I'll still do it day to day, just so, kind of a reminder. Okay, I've got an open morning, really nothing going on, but then I've got this particular call. I wonder if the brain overnight, or when I'm sitting and just kind of doing a nothing, what it's working on. And based on Dr. Lieberman's research, it might well be working on those relationships. And I might say, oh, geez, I've got this encounter with this person tomorrow. I'm not even going to think about it. I'll just show up. And the brain's saying, oh, the heck with that. We're going to prepare. We'll be ready. And so I guess we just really need to trust our brains, and that our brains are doing these things, and we're more prepared than we probably give ourselves credit for, and even preparing to kind of take us through, the various things that could happen. It's going to happen whether we consciously do it or it happens subconsciously. So nothing wrong with taking a break. Nothing wrong with just kind of meditating on something, just letting your mind wander, sitting and staring out the window. Those are still productive times from the standpoint of building great relationships.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today, and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.